The stars look different from space. Lisa Miller knew this better than most. She stood at the viewport of the Alliance Command Center, watching as ships came and went from Earth's orbital docks. 5 years ago, she should have been on one of those ships. 5 years ago, her life had changed forever. "Commander Miller, Admiral Reed wants to see you." Lisa turned from the viewport. The young officer who had delivered the message looked nervous, as most did when they spoke to her these days. She had gained a reputation, the officer obsessed with ghosts. "Thank you. I'll be right there." As she walked the gleaming corridors of the command center, Lisa's mind drifted to the day the SS Thunderbolt disappeared. It was humanity's pride, the most advanced battleship ever built. Captain Jack Reynolds had been her mentor, and she was supposed to be his second in command on that mission. A routine patrol along the border of unexplored space. Nothing dangerous. Nothing unusual. Then her mother got sick. Terminal. 3 days to live. She had taken emergency leave, and Reynolds had told her family came first. The Thunderbolt left without her. It never came back. The Admiral's office door slid open silently. Reed was a tall man with gray hair and tired eyes. He had led the search for the Thunderbolt longer than protocol demanded. "Commander Miller," he said, gesturing to a chair. "Sit down." Lisa sat, back straight. "You wanted to see me, sir. I've received reports that you've been accessing classified sensor data again." Reed sighed. "Lisa, it's been 5 years. We've been through this. The Thunderbolt is gone. Jack is gone. All 500 crew members are gone. With all due respect, sir, we don't know that." Lisa's voice remained calm, professional. There was no wreckage, no distress signal, no signs of attack. A ship that size doesn't just vanish. Space is vast, Commander. There are 1,000 ways to die out there without leaving a trace. Reed's face softened. Your mother's death was not your fault. And neither was the Thunderbolt's disappearance. Lisa fought to keep her face neutral. This isn't about guilt, sir. It's about patterns. She placed her tablet on the desk and activated it. A star map appeared, showing a section of the border between Alliance space and the unknown. Red dots pulsed at various points. These are anomalous energy readings recorded over the past 5 years. Each one lasted less than 10 seconds. Each one was dismissed as a sensor glitch or natural phenomenon. She zoomed in. But when you map them over time, they form a pattern. They're moving, sir, getting closer to Alliance space. Reed looked unimpressed. Commander, I understand losing the Thunderbolt hit you hard. This has nothing to do with my feelings. Lisa interrupted, then caught herself. Sir, the pattern is real. And yesterday we recorded the strongest reading yet. She tapped the tablet again, bringing up a waveform. This energy signature contains fragments of an Alliance military IFF code that got Reed's attention. Which ship? It's degraded, but... She hesitated. I believe it's the Thunderbolt, sir. Reed leaned back in his chair. For a moment, he looked like he might believe her. Then he shook his head. Lisa, you need to let this go. The Alliance has bigger problems now. As if on cue, the desk console chimed. Reed tapped it, and a news feed appeared. The headline scrolled across the screen. Creole Forces ATACK Colony World. Thousand is dead. The Krell are pushing at our borders again, Reed said grimly. They've never hidden the fact that they consider humans an evolutionary mistake, a species that advanced too quickly without the wisdom to use that advancement properly. Lisa looked at the images of destruction on the screen. The Krell were reptilian, standing 8 feet tall with armored scales and 4 arms. Their ships were massive and organic-looking, more like deep-sea creatures than vessels. All available ships are being sent to reinforce the border, Reed continued. We can't afford to chase ghosts. Lisa. Not now. Lisa stood. Sir, I believe these phenomena and the Krell may be connected. Reed's patience was clearly wearing thin. Based on what evidence? The timing of the attacks, They always come within 48 hours of one of the energy anomalies. Correlation is not causation, Commander. You should know that. Reed stood as well. This meeting is over. You're a talented officer, Lisa. The Alliance needs you focused on real threats, not chasing after a ship that's been gone for 5 years. Dismissed. Lisa saluted and left the office, her face betraying nothing of her thoughts. In her quarters, she pulled up her private research again. Reed was wrong. There was something out there, something connected to the Thunderbolt, and she was going to find it. 3 days later, an alert woke her in the middle of the night. One of her automated programs had detected another anomaly, the strongest yet. Without hesitation, she sent a message to the small circle of officers who still believed in her theory. Tom Williams from Science Division, Marcus Jones from Security, Ava Davis from Engineering. Each had lost someone on the Thunderbolt. Each had reason to want answers. They met in the small observation lab Lisa had been granted years ago, before her obsession became a liability. "This better be good, Lisa. I'm on duty in 4 hours," Marcus said, his large frame making the lab seem even smaller. Lisa brought up the readings. "Look at this." The energy signature appeared for almost 30 seconds this time, and it's only half a light year from Outpost 37. Tom adjusted his glasses. "These readings, they're like nothing I've ever seen. It's as if space itself is being folded somehow." "Could it be Krell technology?" Ava asked. "No," Lisa said firmly. "There's definitely an Alliance signature mixed in with whatever else this is, and I've managed to get partial coordinates." The three looked at her with varying degrees of hope and skepticism. "I've put in a request for a science vessel to investigate," Lisa continued. "It was denied." "Of course it was," Marcus muttered. "So I'm going anyway." Lisa looked at each of them. "The Explorer is scheduled for a routine survey mission tomorrow. I've altered the flight plan. If you want to stay behind, I understand. This could end all our careers." Silence filled the lab. Then Ava stepped forward. "The Thunderbolt had my sister on board. I'm in." Tom nodded. "Me too." Marcus sighed heavily. "Someone has to keep you three alive." "I'm in, but this is crazy." Lisa smiled for the first time in what felt like years. "Thank you." As the others left to prepare, Lisa turned back to the viewport. Somewhere out there, beyond the safe borders of Alliance space, was the answer to what happened to the Thunderbolt. And maybe, just maybe, Jack Reynolds and his crew were still alive. Little did she know that the truth would be far stranger and far more terrifying than she could possibly imagine. The Explorer was small compared to most Alliance vessels. It had been built for science missions, not combat. As Commander Lisa Miller sat in the captain's chair, she tried to ignore the knot in her stomach. What they were doing was against orders. If they were caught, their careers would be over. "Course set for the anomaly coordinates," Tom reported from the science station. His fingers moved quickly over the controls. "ETA 3 hours." Lisa nodded. "Any sign we're being followed?" Marcus checked the sensors. "None. But Admiral Reed will notice we're off course soon." "By then we'll have proof," Lisa said. She had to believe that. 5 years of searching had led to this moment. The Explorer jumped to faster than light speed, the stars stretching into lines outside the viewport. Lisa thought of Jack Reynolds, her mentor and friend, the man who should have been her captain. Was he still alive out there? Or was she chasing ghosts, as Reed believed? "Commander," Ava called from Engineering. "I've been studying these energy readings. They don't match anything in our database." "What do you think they are?" Lisa asked. Ava frowned. "If I had to guess, I'd say there's some kind of space-time distortion, like a tear in reality." Tom looked up sharply. "That matches my theory. These aren't normal readings. It's as if something is pushing through from somewhere else." The ship dropped out of FTL 3 hours later. Before them stretched a vast nebula, swirling with purple and blue gases. It wasn't on any of their charts. "That's impossible," Tom whispered. This area was mapped 2 years ago. There was no nebula. Lisa leaned forward. Scan it. Already am, Tom replied. The readings are strange. The nebula seems to be moving. Not just the normal drift of gases. It's moving in patterns. Almost like. Like what? Marcus asked. Like it's breathing. Tom finished. A chill ran down Lisa's spine. Take us closer, but maintain safe distance. As they approached, something caught Ava's eye on the sensors. Commander, I'm detecting debris at the edge of the nebula. On screen, Lisa ordered. The main display showed chunks of metal floating in space. Some pieces were as small as a hand, others as large as a shuttle. Magnify, Lisa said, her heart racing. The image zoomed in on one of the larger pieces. Though damaged and scorched, the Alliance emblem was clearly visible. That's Alliance technology, Marcus said quietly. Can we bring some aboard for analysis? Lisa asked. Ava nodded. I can use the tractor beam to collect a few smaller pieces. Do it, Lisa ordered. But be careful. While Ava worked to retrieve the debris, Tom continued scanning the nebula. Commander, the energy patterns are increasing. Something's happening in there. The ship's communication system suddenly crackled to life. A broken signal, filled with static. Alliance vessel. We've seen. They're coming. Prepare. Not alone. Everyone on the bridge froze. Did you record that? Lisa asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Tom nodded, working to clean it up now. That signal, Marcus said. It was using old Alliance military codes. Codes that haven't been used since. Since the Thunderbolt disappeared. Lisa finished for him. The excitement on the bridge was palpable. After 5 years, they finally had proof. The Thunderbolt, or at least someone from it, was still out there. I've cleaned up part of the message, Tom announced. He played it back. To any Alliance vessel. We've seen what's out here. They're coming. Alliance must prepare. We are not alone in the universe. Lisa felt a chill. Can you tell where it's coming from? Tom pointed to the nebula. In there. But the signal's at least 3 days old based on decay patterns. The rest of the message? Lisa asked. Too degraded, Tom replied. But I'm still working on it. Ava's voice came over the comm. Commander, I've brought several pieces of debris into the cargo bay. You need to see this. In the cargo bay, Lisa stared at the fragments of what had once been Alliance technology. But there was something wrong with them. The metal had been changed somehow. What am I looking at? She asked. Ava ran a scanner over the largest piece. It was part of a standard Alliance hull plate. But it's been modified on a molecular level. There are materials here I can't even identify. Lisa touched the metal. It felt warm, almost alive. Could the Krell have done this? No, Ava said firmly. This is beyond even their technology. I don't even know what this is. A sudden alarm blared throughout the ship. Commander, Marcus's voice shouted over the comm. We have a contact approaching from the nebula. Fast. Lisa and Ava raced back to the bridge. On the main screen, a dark shape was emerging from the swirling gases. What is that? Lisa demanded. Unknown design, Marcus reported. Not in any database, not Alliance, not Krell. The ship was unlike anything Lisa had ever seen. It seemed to shift and change as they watched, its hull covered in the same strange patterns they had seen in the nebula. They're scanning us, Tom reported. Open a channel, Lisa ordered. This is Commander Lisa Miller of the Alliance Science Vessel Explorer. We come in peace. No response came. Instead, the alien vessel began to glow with energy. They're powering weapons, Marcus shouted. Evasive maneuvers, Lisa commanded. Get us out of here. The Explorer lurched as the helm officer tried to turn the ship away. But they were too slow. The alien vessel fired, a beam of energy unlike anything they had seen before, cutting through space itself. The beam missed the Explorer by meters, but the shockwave hit them hard. Systems exploded across the bridge. The lights flickered and went out, replaced by the red glow of emergency power. Damage report. Lisa shouted over the alarms. Hull breach on Deck 3. Someone called back. Engineering taking heavy damage. Ava, status. Lisa called into her comm. No response. Get us out of here now. Lisa ordered. Jump to FTL. The Explorer's engine strained as the ship leaped away from the nebula, leaving the alien vessel behind. As the stars stretched into lines again, Lisa caught her breath. Find Ava, she ordered a nearby officer, and get me a full damage report. The news came back 10 minutes later. Engineering had taken the brunt of the attack. 3 crew members were dead. Ava was alive, but badly injured. In the medical bay, Lisa stood by Ava's bed. The engineer's face was pale, her breathing shallow. The ship? Ava whispered. Did you see it? Lisa nodded. We saw it. It wasn't alien, Ava said, her voice weak. The design. Underneath all those modifications, it was Alliance. Lisa's blood ran cold. What are you saying? Ava's eyes met hers. I think it was the Thunderbolt. As the Explorer limped back toward Alliance space, Lisa stood at the viewport, staring at the stars. If Ava was right, what had happened to the Thunderbolt? And more importantly, what had happened to its crew? The answers, she feared, would be worse than the questions. The Explorer limped back to Alliance space. With engines damaged and 3 crew members dead, the mood on board was grim. In the medical bay, Lisa sat beside Ava's bed. The engineer was stable now, but still weak. Admiral Reed is waiting for us, Marcus said from the doorway. He's furious. Lisa nodded. I expected that. Was it worth it? Marcus asked. 3 people are dead. Lisa looked at the data pad in her hands. It contained all their findings. The debris, the signal, the strange ship. If Ava is right, if that ship was the Thunderbolt, then yes. The Alliance needs to know. When they docked at the main station, armed security officers were waiting. Lisa was taken directly to Admiral Reed's office. Do you have any idea what you've done? Reed shouted the moment the door closed. You stole a ship. You violated direct orders. People died. Sir, we found something, Lisa said calmly, placing the data pad on his desk. Evidence that the Thunderbolt might still exist. Reed's anger didn't fade, but he picked up the pad. As he scrolled through the data, his expression changed from fury to confusion. This nebula isn't on our charts, he said. No, sir. It wasn't there 2 years ago. And these debris pieces, you're sure they're Alliance technology? Yes, sir, but they've been modified with unknown materials. Reed set the pad down. Commander, even if, and that's a big if, this has something to do with the Thunderbolt, it doesn't excuse what you did. Sir, with all due respect. An alarm cut her off. Red lights flashed across the office. Reed's comm unit buzzed. Admiral, we have an emergency, a voice said. Long-range sensors have detected a massive object entering Alliance space. Krell, Reed asked. No, sir. Unknown classification. But it's big. Battleship size. Reed stood. I'll be right there. He looked at Lisa. You're confined to quarters until I decide what to do with you. But Lisa wasn't about to sit this out. As soon as the security officers escorted her to her quarters, she contacted Tom. What's happening? She asked. Something just entered Alliance space. Tom replied, his voice excited. The sensors are going crazy. Lisa, it's coming from the same direction as that nebula. Lisa's heart raced. Can you get me visual? A moment later, her data pad showed a grainy image from the long-range sensors. A ship was approaching. A massive vessel with a shape that was hauntingly familiar but distorted, as if someone had rebuilt the original design with alien concepts. It's the Thunderbolt, she whispered. That's what I thought too, Tom said. But it's changed. The ship's hull was covered in the same strange, shifting patterns they had seen in the nebula. It seemed to absorb light around it, making it hard to focus on. And it was at least twice the size of the original Thunderbolt. They're sending a fleet to intercept it, Tom continued. But Lisa, if that really is the Thunderbolt, they're making a mistake. We need to warn them. Lisa thought quickly. Can you get to Marcus? Have him meet me at Docking Bay 7 in 20 minutes. What are you planning? Something stupid. Breaking out of her quarters was easy. Alliance security was focused on the approaching ship. With Tom and Marcus, Lisa commandeered a small communications vessel. They launched before anyone could stop them. This is insane, Marcus muttered as they approached the Alliance fleet. They'll court-martial all of us. Only if we survive, Lisa replied grimly. Ahead, a dozen Alliance warships had formed a blockade. Beyond them, the massive, changed Thunderbolt approached. It moved with an unnatural grace for something so large. Open a channel to the fleet commander, Lisa ordered. The face of Captain James appeared on screen. Commander Miller, what the hell are you doing out here? Captain, you need to be careful, Lisa said urgently. That ship might be the HS Thunderbolt. James looked shocked. The Thunderbolt was lost 5 years ago. I know, but we found evidence. Commander, return to base immediately. That's an order. The channel cut off. Lisa slammed her fist against the console. They're not listening, she said. The Alliance fleet began hailing the approaching vessel. No response came. They sent warning shots across its bow. Still nothing. Then suddenly, all channels lit up with a transmission from the unknown ship. This is Captain Jack Reynolds of the HSS Thunderbolt. We have returned with knowledge and warnings. The universe is darker than we knew. Lisa froze at the sound of Jack's voice. It was him, but different somehow. Too precise, too calm. They're ordering him to stand down for quarantine procedures, Tom reported, listening to the fleet communications. On screen, they saw Reynolds reply. There is no time for that. The threat approaches. I must speak with your leaders, and with Commander Lisa Miller. Lisa felt a chill run down her spine. How did he know she was a commander now? How did he know she was involved? The fleet is moving to surround the Thunderbolt, Marcus reported. They're charging weapons. No, Lisa whispered. They don't understand what they're dealing with. What happened next happened so fast that Lisa could barely follow it. The Thunderbolt pulsed with energy. A wave of something, not quite light, not quite matter, spread outward. When it touched the Alliance ships, they simply stopped. Engines off. Weapons disabled. Communications silent. But no destruction. No casualties. What just happened? Tom asked, his voice shaking. He disabled the entire fleet, Marcus answered, checking the sensors. Without firing a shot. A new message came from the Thunderbolt. I will speak with the Alliance Council and Commander Lisa Miller. No others. Guide us to Earth. Lisa stared at the screen, at the massive ship that had once been the pride of the Alliance fleet. What had happened to Jack and his crew in the 5 years they were gone? And what horror had they discovered that was so urgent? Take us back to the station, she told Marcus. I need to talk to Admiral Reed. 2 days later, under the heaviest security ever assembled, a shuttle from the Thunderbolt docked at Alliance headquarters on Earth. Captain Jack Reynolds and 3 of his crew stepped out. They looked exactly the same as they had 5 years ago, not a day older. But there was something different in their eyes, something that made even the battle-hardened security officers step back. Jack Reynolds looked at Lisa and smiled, a smile that didn't quite reach his changed eyes. Hello, Lisa, he said. We have much to discuss about what waits beyond the stars. The meeting room in Alliance headquarters was the most secure on Earth. 20 guards stood outside. The windows were darkened. Recording devices were banned. Inside sat the 12 members of the Alliance Council, Admiral Reed, Lisa, and 4 people who had returned from the dead. Captain Jack Reynolds sat perfectly still. Too still, Lisa thought, like he didn't need to breathe as often as normal humans. Beside him were his first officer, weapons officer, and chief engineer. All looked exactly as they had 5 years ago, but their movements were different, precise, measured, as if each gesture was carefully calculated. Captain Reynolds, the council leader, began. "Your return is unexpected. Perhaps you could explain where you've been for the past 5 years." Jack smiled that strange, empty smile again. "Time is different where we were. For us, it has been much longer than 5 years." "And where exactly were you?" Admiral Reed asked. "We call it the Void," Jack replied. "A space between spaces, a dimension between dimensions. When we were patrolling the border, we encountered an anomaly, a tear in the fabric of reality. The thunderbolt was pulled through. How did you survive?" Lisa asked. Jack's eyes turned to her. They were the same blue she remembered, but sometimes they seemed to shift, showing patterns like those on the ship's hull. "We were found by the architects," he said. "Ancient beings who exist beyond conventional physics. They have been watching our universe for billions of years. They helped us, changed us, prepared us." "Changed you how?" the council leader asked, leaning forward. "We were enhanced," Jack's chief engineer explained, her voice unnervingly perfect. "Our bodies no longer age. Our minds process information differently. We can see patterns that normal humans cannot." "And the ship?" Admiral Reed asked. "Also enhanced," Jack said. "The Thunderbolt is partially alive now. It can repair itself, adapt to new threats. The technology is beyond anything humanity has developed." "Why did you come back?" Lisa asked the question everyone was thinking. Jack's face grew serious. "To warn you, the Krell are not your true enemy. They are merely pawns, foot soldiers for a greater threat." He stood and walked to the center of the room. From his hand, he somehow projected a 3-dimensional image of space. Massive shapes moved through the darkness, like cities that had been uprooted and sent drifting among the stars. "The architects call them the Harvesters," Jack explained. "They move from galaxy to galaxy, consuming all advanced life they find. They don't just kill, they absorb knowledge, technology, genetic material. They grow stronger with each civilization they destroy." "And they're coming here?" the council leader asked, voice shaking. "They're already here," Jack replied. "The Krell attacks are not random. The Harvesters are using them to test human defenses, to learn our weaknesses." Lisa felt cold. "How do we stop them?" "The architects modified the Thunderbolt to fight them," Jack said. "They gave us weapons that can harm the Harvesters. But one ship is not enough." Admiral Reed stood. "The Alliance has hundreds of warships. We can. Your current technology is useless against them," Jack interrupted. "Conventional weapons cannot harm the Harvesters. They exist partially outside our dimension." "Then what do you suggest?" the council leader asked. "The Thunderbolt can transfer its modifications to other ships," Jack explained. "We can create a fleet capable of fighting the Harvesters. But the process is difficult. Not all ships or their crews survive the transformation." Silence fell over the room. Lisa studied Jack's face, looking for any trace of the man she had known. There was something there, buried deep, but mostly she saw the cold logic of the architects. "We need proof," Admiral Reed said finally. "Before we risk our ships and crews, we need to see these Harvesters for ourselves." Jack nodded. "That can be arranged. But you won't have to wait long. Our return has accelerated their timeline. They will reveal themselves soon." After the meeting, Lisa found herself alone with Jack in a corridor. The guards kept their distance, watching nervously. "You knew I would be involved," Lisa said. "How?" "The architects see time differently," Jack explained. "They showed me possibilities, branching paths. In many of them, you were searching for us." "Because I wasn't on the ship," Lisa said quietly. Because my mother was dying. Something flickered in Jack's eyes, a hint of the human he had once been. How is she? She died the day after you left. Jack nodded. I'm sorry, Lisa. For what it's worth, if you had been on the Thunderbolt that day, you would have been changed too. And the person you are now, the person who never stopped looking for us, might not exist. What happened to you in there, Jack? Really? He was quiet for a moment. Time moves differently in the void. For us, it was centuries. We were studied, taken apart, and put back together. Our minds were open to realities humans were never meant to see. He looked at her, and for a moment, the old Jack was there. It hurt, Lisa. It hurt for what felt like a lifetime. And then, it didn't. When they were done, we weren't really human anymore. And the architects, can we trust them? They want the harvesters stopped. Our goals align for now. Jack looked away. But the architects have their own plans. They're not saving humanity out of kindness. Before Lisa could ask more, scientists arrived to escort Jack to a lab for tests. She watched him go, wondering if there was anything left of her old friend inside that changed body. In the lab, Alliance scientists examined the 4 returned crew members. Their findings were disturbing. The crew's DNA had been altered in ways that defied understanding. Their brain activity didn't match human patterns. And sometimes, when they thought no one was watching, their skin would ripple with the same strange patterns seen on the Thunderbolt's hull. The examination of the Thunderbolt itself was even more alarming. The ship seemed to react to the scientists studying it, closing off certain areas or changing its configuration. One scientist described it as moody. 3 days after the Thunderbolt's return, as the Alliance Council debated what to do, long-range sensors detected multiple massive objects entering the solar system. They were larger than anything humans had ever built, twisted structures of metal and organic material that bent light around them. The harvesters had arrived. Jack Reynolds stood on the bridge of the Thunderbolt, watching the approaching threat on the main screen. Beside him, Lisa felt small and fragile compared to what was coming. They're earlier than expected, Jack said calmly. We need to begin the modifications now. The council hasn't approved it yet, Lisa replied. Jack turned to her, his eyes now fully showing the strange patterns of the void. Then they've doomed humanity. The sky above Earth darkened as the harvester ships took position. They were massive, each one the size of a small moon. Their surfaces shifted and changed, like living metal. Across the planet, people looked up in fear at the strange shapes blocking the stars. In orbit, the Alliance fleet gathered. Hundreds of ships formed a defensive line, but against the harvesters, they seemed tiny and fragile. On the bridge of the Thunderbolt, Jack Reynolds watched the enemy approach. They'll begin by testing your defenses, he explained to Admiral Reed and Lisa. Then they'll start the harvesting process. How many ships can you modify in time? Reed asked. Perhaps 20, Jack replied. It won't be enough to defeat them, but it might buy us time. Reed nodded grimly. Do it. The Alliance's 20 best ships were brought alongside the Thunderbolt. The process of modification began, strange energy flowing from the changed warship to the others. The crews screamed as the energy touched them, changing them as it had changed Jack and his people. Lisa watched from a small command vessel, her stomach tight with worry. The modified Alliance ships began to show the same patterns as the Thunderbolt, living metal that shifted and moved. Not all of them will survive, Tom said quietly beside her. He was right. 3 ships and their crews were simply unmade. They didn't explode. They ceased to exist, as if reality itself rejected what they were becoming. I need to be part of this, Lisa said suddenly. Tom looked at her in shock. You can't be serious. Jack said the architects showed him possibilities, paths where I was involved. There must be a reason. Before Tom could argue, Lisa took a shuttle to the Thunderbolt. Jack was waiting when she arrived. I knew you would come, he said. I want to help, Lisa told him. I want to undergo the modification. Jack studied her face. The process is painful. You may not survive. And if you do, you won't be human anymore. I understand. Jack led her to a small room deep within the ship. The walls pulsed with strange light. The ship will change you, he explained. It will open your mind to the void. You'll see what we saw. Lisa lay down on a platform in the center of the room. Will it hurt? For a moment, the old Jack appeared in his eyes. Yes, more than anything. But I'll be here when it's over. The process began. Pain like Lisa had never known tore through her body. She felt her mind being pulled apart, examined, and rebuilt. She saw impossible things, the void between dimensions, the ancient architects who existed beyond time, the vast harvesters moving between galaxies, consuming all in their path. And she saw something else, something Jack and the others had missed. When it was over, Lisa rose from the platform. Her body felt different, stronger, faster, more connected to the world around her. Her mind could see patterns that had been invisible before. It worked, Jack said, studying her. Welcome to what comes after humanity. Lisa looked at her hands. Patterns like those on the ship's hull occasionally rippled under her skin. I saw something in there, Jack. Something the architects didn't show you. What? The harvesters have a weakness. The architects put it there, but they never told you about it. Jack's eyes narrowed. Why wouldn't they tell us? Because they have their own plans, Lisa replied. They're using us against the harvesters, but they're not our allies. Before Jack could respond, the ship shuddered. The battle had begun. The harvesters had launched their first attack. Beams of energy that bent space itself struck Earth's defenses. Regular Alliance ships were torn apart instantly. Only the modified vessels stood a chance. The Thunderbolt led the attack, firing weapons that existed partially in another dimension. The harvesters recoiled, actually damaged for the first time in their ancient existence. Lisa took command of a small, modified scout ship, her mind connected directly to its systems. She could feel the ship as if it were part of her body. We need to coordinate, she told Jack over the comm. I can see the pattern now. The weakness the architects built into the harvesters. The battle raged across the solar system. Modified Alliance ships fought with impossible weapons, corridors of twisted space, beams that aged enemy ships to dust, shields that existed partially in another dimension. But the harvesters were strong. For every blow the Alliance struck, the harvesters struck back harder. One by one, the modified ships were destroyed. On Earth, people watched as strange energies lit up the sky. It looked like a storm of smoke and light, beautiful and terrifying. We're losing, Jack's voice came over the comm. There are too many of them. We don't need to defeat them all, Lisa replied. I know where to hit them. She guided her ship toward the largest harvester. Her enhanced mind could see what others couldn't, a point where reality was thinnest, where the harvester was most vulnerable. Jack, I need you to follow my lead, she called. We need to create a cascading reaction in the fabric of space-time. That could tear a hole in reality itself, Jack warned. Exactly, Lisa replied. That's what the architects wanted all along, a way back into our dimension. Jack was silent for a moment. You're right. I can see it now. Together, they coordinated the remaining modified ships. Each fired at precise points around the largest harvester, creating a pattern that rippled through space-time. The result was beyond anything Lisa had imagined. A storm of cosmic energies erupted, swirling smoke and brilliant ruin that tore at the fabric of reality. The harvesters were caught in it, pulled toward the growing tear between dimensions. It's working, Jack called. But the tear is growing too fast. We can't control it. Lisa watched as the harvesters were pulled through the breach, back to the void from which the Thunderbolt had escaped. But the tear continued to grow. We need to close it, she said, from the other side. Jack's voice was grim. I know. The Thunderbolt moved toward the breach, its weapons focused on stabilizing the edges of reality. Lisa, Jack called. The architects planned this. They used us to open a door. Then we'll close it behind us, Lisa replied. She guided her ship alongside the Thunderbolt. Together, with a final burst of energy, the Thunderbolt and most of the remaining modified ships plunged into the breach. As they passed through, their combined energies collapsed the tier, sealing it shut. On Earth, people watched as the strange storm faded from the sky. The harvesters were gone. So was the Thunderbolt. But one small ship remained, Lisa's. Damaged but intact, it drifted in orbit. In the aftermath, Lisa was changed. Not fully human anymore, but not like Jack and the others either. The modification had taken root differently in her. She could still see the patterns, but she maintained her humanity. Admiral Reed found her on the observation deck of Alliance headquarters, looking at the stars. "What happens now?" he asked. Lisa turned to him. For a moment, her eyes showed the patterns of the void, shifting light that hinted at other dimensions. "They'll be back," she said quietly. The architects, the harvesters, this was just the beginning. But we'll be ready. She looked back at the stars, knowing that somewhere beyond them, in the space between spaces, Jack and the others were fighting a war that humanity could barely comprehend. And she would be here, watching for the signs, preparing Earth for what was to come, because the storm of smoke and ruin wasn't over. It had only just begun.